town of Westerly has seen tremendous change in the last 100 years. The people born during the early part of the last century lived through a tumultuous time, including the Great Depression and World War II. Tom Brokaw called them the greatest generation. These people are getting older, and only a few that lived during this historic period are still alive today. Soon their histories, memories, thoughts, hopes, and reflections will be lost if their stories are not told.
Good morning, Tom Galuscio here this morning with Lido Mochetti. We're interviewing for Westerly Historical Society Reflections Program. Good morning, Lido. How are you?
I'm good, Tom. How are you?
Great. Thank you for joining us. I'm well.
You're welcome.
So, Lido, our Reflections Program based on Westerly residents, born and raised here, and at least 80 years old. You qualify for that.
Yeah, I do.
Good for you. Thank you. Tell me, how did the Mochetti family start here in Westerly? Can you tell me about your grandparents and parents?
Well, my mother was one of 6 siblings, the Mudge family, most of whom were pretty prominent locally. And my dad was from Barre, Vermont. My mother was born and spent her whole life here in Westerly. For almost 50 years, she worked at McCormick's department store. My dad was originally from Barre, Vermont. He ended up coming to Westerly probably, I would guess, in the 30s because of the granite industry. And I believe they probably met because both of them for a while worked at Hamilton Standard. And my grandparents, my paternal grandmother was also from Barre, Vermont, but she lived part of the year here in Westerly. Unfortunately, my paternal grandfather died in the big Spanish flu epidemic in 1918, okay. So I never knew him. My maternal grandparents, my grandmother was Scottish, Isabel Mitchell, connected to the Mitchells here in Westerly. She was originally from Dalbeattie, Scotland. My grandfather was English, from Plymouth in England, and he ended up in Westerly again because of the granite industry. Wow. So there's that whole
common
kind of,
denominator.
yeah, exactly. And yes, and so my grandparents lived with my mom and me at 9 Narragansett Avenue. Later in life, after I was born, they kind of moved around early on until things settled down a little bit, and my mom got married to my dad in, let's see, it was July 1943. And at that point, we were living on the second floor of the house that my wife and I and daughter still live in, at 9 Narragansett Avenue. Oh, wow. So outside of a stretch of about 6 years, when I worked in Hartford, that's always been my home, which is kind of a neat history. My grandmother and my grandfather lived with us, and my grandmother, my father's mother, occasionally, for at least part of the year, would live in Westerly. So I'm always thankful because we lived on the corner of Narragansett and Newton Avenue, and my grandmother, my mother's father, my father's mother, lived on Haswell Street, which was 2 streets up. Yeah. So I, for the most part, because my mother or my father's family were all from Vermont, I didn't have a big connection with my Italian side, except for the fact that my grandmother was 2 streets up on Haswell Street, so I could walk up there very easily. And that's one thing I'm always thankful for, because otherwise I wouldn't have had too much exposure to the Italian side of my family, because my grandparents were English and Scottish, and that's basically the household that I lived in.
But I'm sure at that time there were plenty of surrogates if you needed them.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Your neighbors must have been, very great and close at that time.
Yeah. For the most part, my father, unfortunately, I did not know. My mom was pregnant with me when he was killed in the war, May 1944. Wow. He was a member of the crew of a B-17 that was shot down on a mission to Germany.
Oh, wow.
So he was killed in May 44, and I was born in October. So that's a side of me that I always have felt a loss for, you know.
Sure.
But my mom did very well in bringing me up, although she worked most of the time. My grandparents, of course, were always there.
Yeah.
And they were a stable factor in my life. So, as I said before, I was basically here all my life in Westerly, except for a short time when I worked in Hartford.
Narragansett Avenue, where did you go to elementary school? High Street?
Elementary school was Park Avenue,
Okay.
which is the site of the present Methodist Church. Yeah, 4 years of Park Avenue. Ruth Williams was the principal. She was a bit strict. She ended up, I think, being a principal at Tower Street.
Okay.
And then I think she also taught first grade there. Second grade was Miss Havens. Third grade was Miss Kenyon. And fourth grade, I can't quite remember. I think we had, I think our teacher left mid-year, and then we had Mrs. Spazzato for a substitute.
Okay.
From there, kindergarten was that wonderful shingle-style school on Chestnut Street.
Yes.
Which I think the ambulance corps is there, yeah. And there were two teachers. I had a Mrs. Acalina, who was really, really a good teacher. And then from there, as I said, I went to Park Avenue for 4 years. And then from there, I'm trying to remember, it kind of gets a little complicated because at that point, Tower Street and State Street schools were being built. So I think when the school year started, I think for a while we were at High Street School. And then eventually Tower Street School opened in the 50s. And I went up there for half a year and had a wonderful teacher, Mrs. Holland. She was big on science. The one thing I really remember is the fact that we built a volcano.
Nice.
And, you know, she was, as I said, really big on science, and she was a good teacher. So that was, sixth grade was like a half year there. And then we moved to Babcock. Okay. And I remember all my teachers at Babcock. They were a great bunch. You know, Miss Ellis and Miss Damroll, my cousin Cliff Mitchell, Mr. St. Ange, Mr. Whitman, Mr. Dowd, Mr. Lacatura, I can't remember. Well, whatever his name is, I can't quite remember. But anyway, he was a vice principal under Herman Driggs, and he taught, I think it was sheet metal shop. So that was a good experience. I enjoyed junior high, and of course I was close to the school, so I could walk to the junior high, and eventually on from there to the high school.
Ward Senior.
Ward Senior, that's right. And teachers there, you know, I can remember quite a few of them. I took Italian for 3 years, and Lillian Ruisi was my teacher for that. And then there was, Miss Kingsley, who lived right around the corner from me on Spruce Street. I think I had Mr. Jerry. He had just graduated, and he had just started as a biology teacher. So
then he went on to be superintendent.
That's right. He had a long career.
He did
in the school system, as did my uncle Bob Mudge, who
I was wondering when you said the Mudge
family. Who was an outstanding athlete at URI, and he eventually became the principal of Babcock Junior High for a number of years. Yeah,
I remember Bob fondly.
Yeah,
He had his wife Claire.
My Aunt Claire, who was wonderful.
Yes,
she eventually was a teacher at Duns Corners.
That's where I had her.
Duns Corners School.
Grade.
Yeah, great teacher.
Family.
Yeah,
Yes.
they were really wonderful educators, both of them, and they always put the student first. And particularly, my Uncle Bob was typically reserved in a lot of ways because of his English background, but Claire was a lot more outgoing, and I remember a number of wonderful extracurricular programs she did at Duns Corner School.
I'll tell you about a few later.
Yeah, okay.
She was great.
Yeah, she was great. Yeah, they were my of all my mother's siblings, they were probably, my Uncle Bob they were probably the closest.
Nice.
Yeah, he sort of tried to father me along the way when I was younger because I had no dad. And they lived it's really neat when you think about the fact that back then it was possible for extended family to kind of live in a fairly close geographical location. And for a while when Claire and Bob were first married, they rented a second floor apartment at the end of Newton Avenue. And it was a house that was owned by the LaVias. And so there again, I could simply walk down the end of the street, and they were there.
Oh, nice.
And my grandmother was up. My father's mother was up on Haswell Street. So that was good.
Yeah, very close geographically.
A good, strong family
Network,
exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, you're very fortunate.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So, after high school?
I went to URI for 4 years, and that was a good experience for the most part. And I graduated in 1967, and from there I ended up taking a job at a wonderful department store. I guess it was the retail aspect of my mother's career that kind of exposed me to that whole retail scene. So I ended up in Hartford, Connecticut, mainly because my aunt and uncle, my mother's sister Jane and her husband, lived in West Hartford. And so throughout my early years, we would always make trips to visit them. So I became very familiar with it was a wonderful department store, G. Fox and Company, which unfortunately, like so many of the other big department stores, is no longer there. So I enrolled in a 2-year program that was called an executive training program. It was I think back on my year. I was there 6 years, on my years there, and am forever thankful that it was such a great program. And so much of what I learned there, I used in the business that I opened in Westerly in 1987. Really? So I went through 2 years of training at G. Fox and Company, and then finally ended up as a department manager in the gift shop. Okay. So I left Hartford in 1972, came back to Westerly, and got a job working at a store in Watch Hill called the Mine Shop, which was run by Gertrude Perluck. She had 2 stores in Watch Hill. One was the clothing store, which was on Bay Street, and the other one was a furniture gift shop, which was in the old firehouse in Watch Hill. So I was there for about 4 years, and that was a great experience. And from there, and at that point, I'm trying to think. From there I got involved with a whole slew of local programs, mainly Library and Historical Society. And one of them is one of my fondest memories. And I was hired by the library in 1979 as a museum coordinator. Now, I don't know if you remember that the library originally in the original children's wing, the lowest level was a museum.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
So that all disappeared in the
the rock collection?
Yeah,
the stuffed animals, the owl, the nature stuff?
And that was in the basement of the children's room. The children's addition, I should say. The children's room was on the main floor, and then up above is the art gallery, which is still in existence. So when Mrs. Wilcox, Harriet Wilcox, died in the early 1900s, her art collection, she and her husband collected art. I believe they lived in Brooklyn. That all went to the library, and the first addition to the library was an art gallery. That's where the stacks, you probably remember the stacks in the glass floor.
The glass floor.
Which was, everyone loved the glass floor. Yeah. And anyway, that was the first edition. That housed the art collection, paintings and sculpture, and eventually that went up into the art gallery in the children's wing. So back in the late 60s, the library decided that it could no longer afford the insurance. and the fact that a lot of these things were accessible to the public. They hired me to coordinate the sale of all these things from the Wilcox collection. And also, at that point, after the 60s renovation, all the things that were in the old museum were moved into movable storage units. So I was asked to, or hired to liquidate all of those things, to return things that had been loaned to the library if I could find the original owner, and the paintings and the sculptures. It was kind of a sad day, Tom, because I knew as a child spending so much time in the library, I kind of knew and saw all these things, and it was kind of a sad day when they were shipped off to New York to be auctioned. But
it really gave the library some diversity at the time.
it did, and a little bit of character, you know. There was that whole side of the library that was geared towards art, you know, and the painting and sculpture collection was a decent collection. So I worked on that for probably a couple of years, and then out of that came probably one of the things I'm most proud of, a little book called Life's Little Pleasures. When I was working there at the library, we sort of rediscovered a whole collection of glass plate negatives, which I think are now here in the Historical Society's collection.
Yeah, we have.
They had been stored in the attic of the library. And the person I kind of worked with was the art director at that point, Bruce Pelletier, and he was big into photography. So we brought them downstairs. The great thing about the collection was that everything, all the glass plates were in envelopes. And the envelopes were all identified as to location.
They still are.
Which, that's incredible. So anyway, the Friends of the Library decided to subsidize a little book on some of the photographs. So I worked on that for a while. Life's Little Pleasures. The Friends subsidized it. And it did very well. Did very well. So
We'll have to see if we have one in our collection.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too.
No, you probably do. There are not many around anymore, but for the most part, that was a great experience, and I'm very proud of that in that booklet.
Sure.
And from there, I ended up doing a number of other small booklets. One with Harriet Moore on the Watch Hill Carousel. One with she was the art director, graphics design person at the library, Lorraine Byrne, and she did a coloring book, Westerly coloring book, and I was responsible for writing the little historical captions. So that whole series of historical things are kind of important in my life.
Now, somewhere in there, speaking of important parts of your life, you met your wife.
I met my wife, guess where, of all places, at the library.
Oh, wow.
My wife retired about just before the pandemic, after 50 years at the library. And over that time, she had moved into different locations. Her name is Helen Giles. Her parents, Bill and Helen Giles, were involved with the insurance business in Westerly for a number of years. But at that point, when I met her, she was in charge of acquisitions on the second floor. And back then, there was a records collection which was loaned out, same way that books were. So she asked me if I would help out in kind of updating, improving the classical record part of that collection. And that's how I met her.
Very interesting.
So, and then after that, before we were married, she was involved with public relations and doing programs and that sort of thing. We worked together on a number of programs. Mostly the Friends sponsored over the years, yeah.
Very interesting.
That's how I met Helen.
Oh, the library's been a very big part of both of your lives.
Yeah, exactly.
What a great asset to the town.
Oh, it's incredible asset. It really is. We're so lucky, thanks to the Wilcoxes.
Yeah,
and I just talked about Harriet and Stephen, who initially subsidized the library project. We are indeed lucky to have that facility. Yeah.
So,
and the park, of course.
oh, without saying. 17 acres
I know.
of beautiful,
Park is incredible. Absolutely
beautiful,
incredible.
pristine property.
So I also, after that project, I've kind of jumped around in my career. Before I had the little art gallery and custom picture framing business in Westerly, I taught extended education courses for Rhode Island School of Design and the community college. I did that for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was after our daughter Alexandra was born in September 1982. And it worked out great, Tom, because Helen was working at the library during the day. I had the days off because I was teaching classes in the evening, mostly in Providence and Warwick. So I would go off and do my thing at night, and Helen would do her things at day, during the day. So it gave us a chance to really spend time with our daughter Alex.
Wonderful.
Who's now 43, believe it or not. And of course, over the years, I got involved with the Babcock Smith House shortly after it was put into a trust. And I worked there initially on the furnishings committee and did a lot of programs for the house. So that was a major part of my, my background.
And did you mention that you were part of the Historical Society for a period?
Helen and I were responsible for the newsletter initially back.
Oh.
So this had to be back in the 79, 80, 81, thereabouts. We did that for a while. And and then mostly my time was spent working with the trustees on getting the house ready to open it up for the public.
Okay.
So, and that was a wonderful experience
Yeah,
too.
we're quite proud that the society has been functioning continually since 1913 without any interruption. And
yeah, that's great.
happy to hear you were part of it at one time.
Yeah. Well, for many years, before the Historical Society had this wonderful facility, it was the library, was their home.
Yeah.
So, and they would do monthly programs, and they did, as you know, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
So the other thing is that they did a series of wonderful historical publications over the years. Yeah. One on Bungtown and one on the fires and any number of other publications.
Yeah. We try to do the same today.
Yeah,
which is great. Well, thank you. Thank you for your contributions to both.
So that's a little
organizations.
plug.
A
plug. On
well, we know this, but our viewers might not. So this is great. Great part to share.
And it's really a great organization. And as I just said a little while ago, this facility is so wonderful, especially what's been done with the granite collection. And it means a lot to me because my dad, when he came to Westerly, after he graduated from high school in Barry, he enrolled in a program at a fairly prestigious college or school in Manhattan called the Mechanics Institute, which basically trained a lot of people, a lot of men specifically, to be draftsmen and designers for the granite industry. So he went through that program, and at that point was hired by a Fraquelli, I can't remember his first name, who had a granite monument business at the foot of Oak Street, sort of where Riverhead is now.
Yeah.
So when he came to Westerly, he got a job as a designer draftsman there. And that's what he was doing when he went off, when he enrolled in the service in October 1942. Okay. So a lot of his designs I had at home. My mother had saved them, and they came to the granite collection here at the Historical Society.
Wonderful. Well, that's good to know.
Oh, my business. My business.
Your business. 30 plus years, right?
31 years in downtown Westerly, which I kind of knew fairly well because my mother was at McCormick's. And I was asked by David Rathbun, who at that point owned that building on the corner, and his father ran C.A. Morgan Insurance, which eventually moved to the second and third floor. And he and his wife, Pat Laurie, who worked with Deirdre at Trek Tours, which is still in operation, they were looking for a business to fill that first floor space, or the main corner space. So they entered into an agreement with Robert Kennedy, not the Robert Kennedy, who was an artist with his wife from Boston. And they did a series of limited edition prints, which they promoted. And somehow I think Pat maybe knew of them. And so Pat and David ended up going into a franchise agreement with Kennedy Studios. So Pat and David initially had a neighbor of theirs who was the manager of the business for a short time. She left, and at that point David approached me about doing it. And I thought, oh, you know, with my art history background and my business background, sounds like a good fit.
Yeah.
And it was a small business, and so I took over that business in 87. And I soon realized that people in Westerly were not that interested in buying these prints, mostly of Massachusetts sites that the Kennedys did. Okay. So we finally got out of the franchise, and I ran it for the rest of my career there as a picture framing business and a small art gallery, which featured local artists. Yeah. And I have to say that was a great part of the business because of the fact that I met so many interesting people in Westerly who were artists. Some of them were professional, some of them were not, but it was good. I missed that very much.
Well, your shop had a bird's eye view of everybody coming through town.
It was the best corner in town. It really, really was. And I always made a point of keeping the outside of the store, the windows, looking great. Because when you're coming down through town, that's the first place you see.
No matter which way you're going.
That's right. I spent a lot of time at Christmas doing the windows, and we had a lot of windows. It was a major job. But I think for about 5 years in a row, I won the first prize in the commercial category until the Chamber of Commerce said, here, let's give somebody else a chance. So I got a plaque, nice, beautiful plaque that puts me in a special position as the winner of so many first prize awards for the commercial category. Wow. So yeah, that was great.
So you landed there in 87. You were there for 30 years.
Yeah.
The whole landscape of Westerly changed dramatically over that time period.
It did.
From great and vibrant at 87 to a point where business was scarce and foot traffic was scarce.
That's right.
So tell me about that change.
Well, but I'll go back a bit to my childhood when I remember all the stores were open and closed on a schedule. You know, and the schedule was basically stores closed half a day on Wednesday because they stayed open into the evening on Friday. Okay. And originally, I guess, and I don't quite remember this, but Saturday was a big day. Friday night was a big day for downtown. And people would come just to, you know, walk around, not necessarily just to shop, to see who they could see. That sort of wonderful, almost European approach.
Impromptu social gathering.
And so anyway, there wasn't a lot of that for the most part because schedules for the different stores had changed. But there was still a good percentage of retail. You know, some of the stores that were there when I started are still there. Woodmansey's and Bob Murren's, Wesley Jewelry, the Burley Jewelry, they're still around. But there was a good percentage of stores, of retail stores. I mean, the usual layout with most of those buildings was that, and they were 2- and 3-story buildings, as was the building that I was in. You know, the first floor, street level was retail. And then second floor was offices, professionals, barbershops, insurance, that sort of thing.
Accountants, lawyers.
And that kind of changed, obviously. And it's really changed. And then now, of course, although I have to say, nights in Westerly back during my tenure there, for the most part, were pretty quiet. There wasn't much activity.
5 o'clock, everything
That's
closed
right.
up.
And a lot of stores didn't even continue to stay open Friday night. And then you saw the influx of insurance, or not insurance, real estate. and other professionals of that sort of that ilk, and also particularly bars and restaurants. So the whole thing is turned completely around, so that daytimes, which were really for the most part the busy time for the retail business, this is for the professionals. And look at the Washington Trust. Remember all those floors were filled with businesses?
Yeah.
I remember, and professionals like dentists and optometrists, and that's all gone. And now, which is what it's done is revitalize Westerly for the most part at night.
Oh, in a very positive manner.
And particularly the end up towards the train station, which was kind of, never the greatest part of downtown Westerly. It was, at that point, when I was there for the most part, it was the Dixon Square area. But that's all completely changed to the point where you go down there on a weekend night, Tom, to eat out or whatever, go to the movies.
Well, if you recall that the Savoy was always a dark cloud.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. So that whole part of town is just completely revitalized. It's really great. And the theater, the United Theater Complex.
Wonderful.
Helen and I were there last night for a movie, and I just marvel at what's been done to that whole thing. And that has revitalized that part of Westerly more.
Not just
probably.
in the reconstruction, but the people running it and the type of programs.
Oh,
that they
exactly.
have.
Exactly. And the fact that, they have a youth orchestra group that's connected with the Rhode Island Philharmonic, and they've gotten young people involved into downtown Westerly.
Yeah.
So the whole scene has, in that aspect, has changed immensely.
It really is pleasant to see all that.
Yeah, it is.
It really is. It's
It
so
is.
nice.
Yeah. And look at the number of restaurants and bars we have now. And every week, just about, a new one's opened. So
Yeah.
that's been a big draw.
Yep. It really has.
Yeah.
It brought life back, which is nice.
Yeah. And it's a great downtown. It really is. I mean, a number of times I did walking tours of downtown back probably in the early 80s. And it's such a great collection of buildings. And it's fairly intact,
Oh, sure.
outside of the damage that fires have done to mostly buildings on High Street. But I remember going downtown as a kid, and I remember, and I'm putting myself into the 80-year-old age
That's why you're
bracket.
here.
I remember stores like McClellan's and Woolworth's, and Grant's came a little later.
McCrory.
And McCrory came after Grant's, and that was still in operation when I opened my store because I used to go there every so often.
Was the bowling alley open under McCrory?
No.
You don't recall that? That might have
I
been-
recall
might have
that
been-
level,
That might have been before your time.
the lowest level there,
Yeah.
which was merchandise. And I remember it well because that's where the pets were. Well, the pets being fish and birds.
Okay.
But I remember that very well. And they had a little snack. Remember the snack
I
bar
do.
on the
Yeah.
first floor? Yeah.
Yep. Viola.
Good hot dogs.
Viola ran that. Hot dogs and popcorn.
Hot dogs and popcorn. And so McCrory's, when McCrory's left, that was the end of the bigger department stores. And then of course there was McCormick's, which survived, I think, probably into the early 90s. And Dowers was there.
Okay.
And the men's stores. There were like 4 of them. There was
Mearns.
Toscano, Bob
Toscano's.
Mearns, Kenyon's.
Kenyon's, yeah.
Toscano's is still going.
Yep.
And I think there
Kenyon's
was
was the only
another
place
one.
you could get Boy Scout stuff on the
Yeah.
lower level.
Yeah.
And Tom McCann.
Tom McCann, yeah.
Yeah.
There used to be 3 shoe
Western
stores.
Auto, or was it Jack and Harry's?
I think it was Western or Montgomery
Western Auto.
Ward.
Yeah.
I think
But up by the United.
that's right. That's right. Where the cafe is now, I
Yes.
think,
Yeah.
in that part of that complex. And then it was Montgomery Ward, and then Western Auto, I think, was its last manifestation. Yeah.
Yep.
But
No, great memories.
yes,
It's
definitely.
always a treat to go through town, and it still is today. There were some times that it got a little thin.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The economy.
It got
the
really
malls
thin.
opened up, and people.
Yeah, and then not only the malls, but the shopping centers in Westerly.
Yeah.
And they began to, as there was more emphasis with people on traveling by car as opposed to walking, and as the center of Westerly expanded,
Yeah.
there was more demand for retail spaces that had sufficient parking. And the first one was right over here, the Granite Street Shopping
yeah,
Center.
That's right.
That was the first one.
But it's great that Wesley's had the tenacity to support downtown continually and keep it alive.
Yes, that's right.
You know,
That's right.
We recognize what a gem it is, and we've really never let it go. By the
That's
way.
right. And I think a significant part of that, Tom, is the fact that the Chamber of Commerce here in Westerly and Pawcatuck have organized a lot of major events to bring
sure.
people,
Big
bring people
proponent.
downtown.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is great. So yeah, it's a neat downtown. It's survived, unlike a lot of small town downtowns, which haven't for any number of reasons. And
Well, I'm glad you were a part of it for 31 years.
yeah, well, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. And even longer. I remember my first job. I'm not sure if I got paid, but this is when Jim McCormick Sr. was running McCormick's. And my mother had a lot of great regard for him. And my mother was the buyer it was jewelry and gloves and that sort of thing. And when you came into the old store, it was basically the first counter straight ahead of you. And it was two-sided. My mom was on one side, and on the other side were the Hughes sisters, Annie and Mary Hughes, who sold stockings. And so my first job, as it were, was running the elevator. Do you remember the elevator? 4 floors, actually. The basement where all the supplies were kept, bags and boxes. And I don't remember, the top floor was originally the toy department. But that was gone by the time I was running the elevator.
Okay.
So I did that Christmas time. And that was kind of neat. It was exciting.
You could pay your phone bill there.
Yeah,
little
that's
phone
right. Oh,
office
do you
was
remember? The mezzanine was where the office was.
Yeah.
And it overlooked the whole first floor. And Mr. McCormick Sr.'s office was off that room. And, there was Rose Sposato who worked there. And, I can't think of the other 2 women. And, yeah, that was neat. And they had the shoe department, which was way in the back. And Willie Wells was in charge of that. And then, and the man who did all the signage was a great calligrapher. All the signage and the decorations was Robert Holt. And he had a little hole-in-the-wall office which ran along the west side of the building, I think, on the riverside. Yeah. Ran along that side of the building. And yeah, he was very talented guy. So,
People in Westerly who might have made an impact on your life along the way? Anybody?
I would say my Uncle Bob Mudge.
Okay.
He did.
I thought you might say that.
And let me stop and think here. And I think probably, my grandmother. She was a very significant part of my life because she ran the household because my mother was off working. She was a significant part of it for a number of reasons. And those were the two major ones, I think.
And what would you say the philosophy that's gotten Lido this far?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with my upbringing and the fact that if you're going to do a job, you do the best you can and you stick with it. And I still kind of go by that particular philosophy. You do the best that you can. And I always try to work with people in a way that is good not only for them, but it's good for me. And I still do that on a volunteer basis. So, and I would also say, as far as influences go, there were, a number of people, a number of priests at Christ Church that affected me on that part of my life growing up.
That's a part we didn't talk about much. You're quite active with
I am,
with Christ Church,
very active.
which is a beautiful staple, again, in downtown Westerly. Has been for a very long time.
It's a beautiful building.
Do you want to talk about...
Smith Granite from over here.
There we go.
Haul down the hill, I understand, I wasn't around, on these great big carts, you know, because the granite was brought from here to the site, apparently where it was cut. But the oxen, you probably know this, the oxen were
Couldn't go down
behind. They were behind the cart, because if they were in front of it,
They got run over.
they would get crushed by the cart
Sure.
heading down the hill. So the oxen were behind. And yeah, I'm very much into volunteer work, particularly the history of the building over the years. And it's got a great history.
Good.
And yeah, I first got involved back in 1956 when George Kent, who was a big name in the community and beyond
Still
that,
is.
Still is. He's still on the keyboard there. He had just been appointed organist and choir master in about 1956. And I got involved with the choir and sang in the choir for 30-some years, and then from there went into different other parts of the
Very
church.
nice.
This is then and now. So this was from I don't know when it was.
Oh, yeah, look. the same-
19, yeah, I was
same exact
14
position.
years old, and that's me at Westerly's 350th, where I rang the bells. My name is Lido Mochetti. I've been ringing bells here for probably about 60 years. I learned when I was fairly young, when I was a member of the boys' choir here at Christ Church, and George Kent, Bunky, had taught several of the boy choristers early on to learn to ring the bells. The bells are really fascinating. They were installed in August 1905. The bells were cast by the Manili Bell Company from Troy, New York, which was a major bell foundry in the East Coast. It is not a carillon, as some people call it, because we don't have enough bells. The chime basically consists of 6 to 8 bells tuned to a basic diatonic scale. All the bells are known as dead bells, and they're called that because they're permanently attached to wooden beams. The arrangement here has not changed at all. The whole mechanism of how the bells are rung is exactly the way it was, except for some minor renovations over the years, which really haven't changed anything significantly. The bells are basically played the way they were in 1905. We're in the process of trying to restore this area a little bit because it gets neglected, and I think at some point that will happen. But the plan for the future is to get some classes going so some of the younger kids in the parish can begin to learn how to play the bells. It's a historical part of it, and namely over the last few years, we started a restoration project for the stained glass windows, and I more or less was in charge of that, and that was great.
Nice.
Great. So yeah.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful church.
Yeah, it's a handsome building, really
So
is.
here's a tough one. If you had to sum up Westerly in one word.
Oh boy, you're putting me on the spot.
That's a tough one.
That's a tough one. I would say, in one word.
One word.
One word.
Just one word. And then you can elaborate a little bit after.
One word. I would say great. A great town.
Good.
Small, but not that small anymore. That you lose that small New England hometown basis.
It has grown, but not
Oh
too
yeah,
big.
yeah.
Hasn't
it
gotten too
certainly
big for
has
its
grown.
britches, right?
Has grown,
Yeah.
and that's good. And understandably, why wouldn't it grow? Because look at where we are, and that's the other thing. We're halfway between Boston and New York. Very convenient.
Yeah.
And of course, we have that great train service,
Yeah.
which wasn't the case for a while, but that's come back.
Let's come back. Yeah.
And the shoreline. It's beautiful, beautiful stretch of shore. I love
Almost
the beach.
amazing. So do I.
I love the beach.
Absolutely. It's such a big draw for this community.
It is. It is, and it's gotten so much better in Squamicut specifically.
Yeah.
And there was a great article about that, I think, in the paper recently, and the work that Caswell Cook Jr. has done, revitalizing that. But environmentally, it's I mean, the location is wonderful. So I enjoy that. And curiously enough, I thought you might ask where I got my name from, my first name.
Oh, I haven't, but let's hear it.
Lido, L-I-D-O, which
Yeah.
was my Dad's first name,
Okay.
and I got it from him, obviously.
But not a junior.
No, I'm Lido John.
Okay.
He was Lido Risveglio.
Oh.
And anyway, so, and as I said, he was Lido, and I really never asked my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, where the name came from, except in Italian, it's a real word. It refers to a beach resort. The famous Lido is in Venice,
Really?
which I visited once when I went on. I was on a tour with the chorus of Westerly back in 1987. They went on a 3-week concert tour of Italy, and I was lucky enough to go as what we call a non-singer. I wasn't part of the chorus, but I went along for the trip. And so when I was in Venice, and the chorus, it was an incredible tour that started out up in Spoleto, which is famous for its music festival, and ended up in St. Peter's Basilica, where they gave a concert. And so one of the places along the way was Venice, and the cathedral there, that glorious building. And so I thought to myself, I've got to get to the Lido. So I went, and it was a side trip on a Vaporetto, I think they're called. And I remember wading into the ocean, not like our beaches. Our beaches are much better. But I remember collecting a whole mess of shells for my daughter to bring home.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. So that's a background on my name.
Didn't know that. That's
So
interesting.
yeah. Well, then you see that name around referring. There are, I think, a couple of Lido resorts in Florida, and that sort of thing. But that's the history of my name.
Isn't that a part of a cruise ship, the Lido deck?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. As a matter of fact, Tom, a friend of mine, we have a really nice back or side porch on Newton Avenue. We sit on the corner of Narragansett and Newton Avenue. And a friend of mine gave me this wonderful little sign, and we set it up during the summer because we enjoy spending time there. Welcome to the Lido deck.